When tech prodigy Nolan Reid publicly fired brilliant marketing director Sophia Chen at Horizon's annual gala, no one expected him to show up at her doorstep 3 months later, desperate for her help. But why is this ruthless CEO suddenly on his knees begging for forgiveness? And how did the woman everyone pitied become the one holding all the power? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The gleaming headquarters of Horizon Technologies stood like a beacon against the San Francisco skyline, its glass walls reflecting the golden California sunset. Inside, the company's annual gala was in full swing, the air electric with excitement and the subtle undercurrent of ambition that defined Silicon Valley. Sophia Chen smoothed the fabric of her carefully chosen navy dress, a modest splurge she'd justified as an investment in her career. After 2 years as Horizon's marketing director, she had transformed their brand from a struggling startup to a household name. Tonight was supposed to be her crowning achievement, the launch of their revolutionary new AI platform, a project she had poured her heart and soul into for the past year. "You've outdone yourself, Sophia," said Marcus, her assistant, appearing at her side with 2 glasses of champagne. "The board can't stop talking about the presentation. I heard Nolan himself was impressed." Sophia accepted the glass with a grateful smile, though she didn't drink. At 34, she had learned to keep her wits sharp at company events, especially when Nolan Reid was in attendance. The CEO of Horizon Technologies had a reputation for making snap decisions after a few drinks, decisions that could make or break careers. "Let's not count our bonuses yet," she said, her eyes scanning the room for Nolan's tall figure. "You know how he is." Everyone knew how Nolan Reid was. At 37, he had built Horizon from nothing, transforming his college coding project into a tech empire worth billions. His genius was undeniable, but so was his volatility. Brilliant, demanding, and sometimes cruel, he cycled through executives like seasonal fashion. The industry joked that a year at Horizon under Reid was equivalent to a decade anywhere else, both in experience and in gray hairs. Sophia spotted him across the room, holding court with a group of investors. Even from a distance, his presence commanded attention. Tall and lean, with dark hair perpetually styled to look carelessly perfect, Nolan Reid carried himself with the confidence of a man who had never truly failed at anything. "He's looking for you," Marcus whispered, nodding toward Nolan. "He's been asking where you disappeared to." Before Sophia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from her brother Michael. Dad's test results came back. "Doctor wants to discuss options. Can you call when you're free?" Sophia's stomach tightened. Her father's Parkinson's had been worsening, and the new experimental treatment they'd pinned their hopes on was expensive. Prohibitively so without the health insurance Horizon provided. She tucked the phone away, forcing her professional smile back into place. Tonight wasn't just about her career, it was about her family's future. "Miss Chen." Nolan's voice cut through her thoughts. He had materialized beside her, startling both her and Marcus. "I've been looking for you." "Mr. Reid," she acknowledged, straightening her posture. Despite working directly with him for 2 years, he still insisted on formalities in public. "I was just discussing the market response with Marcus. Early indicators are exceeding our projections." Nolan's expression revealed nothing as he gestured toward the private conference room adjacent to the main hall. "Walk with me. We need to talk." Sophia followed, ignoring the curious glances from colleagues. One-on-one meetings with Nolan were rare and rarely positive. As they walked, she mentally reviewed the launch, searching for any possible misstep. The platform had gone live without a hitch. Press coverage was overwhelmingly positive, and social media was buzzing exactly as she'd planned. "The launch is a success," she said as they entered the empty conference room, glass walls offering a view of the celebration continuing outside. "We've already seen a 15% increase in—" "I'm not here to talk about the launch," Nolan interrupted, closing the door behind them. "I'm making changes to the executive team." Sophia's heart skipped. This wasn't unusual. Nolan regularly reshuffled leadership, often promoting those who impressed him. After tonight's success, perhaps the VP position she'd been working toward was finally within reach. "I see," she said carefully. "What kind of changes?" "I'm bringing in Jonathan Mercer as Chief Marketing Officer. He starts next week." Jonathan Mercer. Sophia knew the name. a high-profile executive from their biggest competitor, known for aggressive tactics and questionable ethics. The implication was clear, and the floor seemed to shift beneath her feet. "You're replacing me," she said, her voice steady despite the shock rippling through her. "May I ask why?" Nolan leaned against the conference table, studying her with those calculating green eyes that had made countless venture capitalists open their checkbooks. "Horizon needs to evolve. Mercer brings a different energy, different connections. The board agrees it's time for a change." "A change?" Sophia repeated. "After I just delivered the most successful product launch in company history. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story." "The product speaks for itself," Nolan said dismissively. "Marketing was secondary." The casual cruelty of his dismissal stung worse than the news itself. 2 years of 70-hour weeks, of missed holidays and postponed medical appointments reduced to secondary. "When does this take effect?" she asked, already mentally calculating her savings, her father's medical costs, how long she could stay afloat. Nolan checked his watch. An absurdly expensive piece that could probably fund her father's treatment for a year. "Immediately. HR has your paperwork ready. Your access will be revoked at midnight." "Immediately?" Sophia couldn't hide her shock now. "In the middle of our launch gala?" "No time like the present," Nolan said with the casual confidence of someone who had never worried about paying rent. "Clean breaks are best for everyone." Sophia fought to maintain her composure. "I'd appreciate the professional courtesy of announcing this myself to my team tomorrow." Nolan pushed off from the table, straightening his perfectly tailored suit. "That won't be necessary. I'll be addressing the company in—" he glanced at his watch again, "about 5 minutes." Before Sophia could protest, he opened the conference room door, revealing the gala in full swing. Instead of returning to the party, however, he stepped onto the small stage where the band had been playing. The music cut off abruptly as he took the microphone. "If I could have everyone's attention," Nolan's voice boomed through the speakers. The crowd, already loosened by free-flowing champagne, quieted gradually. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate another milestone for Horizon Technologies." Sophia stood frozen in the doorway of the conference room, a sick feeling spreading through her stomach as she realized what was about to happen. "As you know, Horizon thrives on innovation and forward momentum," Nolan continued. "Sometimes that means making difficult decisions for the future of the company." The room had gone completely silent now, a collective tension building as employees recognized the familiar preamble to an executive ousting. Sophia felt hundreds of eyes shifting between her and Nolan. Effective immediately, Sophia Chen will be leaving her position as marketing director. Please join me in thanking her for her contributions and wishing her the best in her future endeavors. The silence that followed was deafening. Then came the murmurs, the awkward shuffling of feet, and finally scattered, obligatory applause. Sophia stood paralyzed, her professional mask slipping as the public humiliation washed over her. She caught glimpses of reactions around the room. Marcus's shock, the barely concealed glee of rivals who had coveted her position, the genuine confusion of team members who had just been celebrating their success under her leadership. Nolan wasn't finished. "I'm pleased to announce that Jonathan Mercer will be joining us as our new Chief Marketing Officer, bringing fresh vision to Horizon's next chapter." More applause, more enthusiastic this time. The business world loved a shiny new toy, and Jonathan Mercer was Silicon Valley royalty. Already, Sophia could see people mentally recalculating their allegiances, adjusting to the new power structure. Nolan stepped off the stage, immediately surrounded by sycophants eager to congratulate him on his bold move. He didn't look in Sophia's direction again. With as much dignity as she could muster, Sophia moved through the eye-pitch crowd toward the exit. A few colleagues attempted awkward condolences, which she acknowledged with tight smiles. Others blatantly avoided eye contact, as if failure might be contagious. "Sophia, wait!" Marcus caught up to her at the elevator, his young face flushed with indignation. "He can't do this. The launch was perfect. The numbers." He's the CEO, Marcus. He can do whatever he wants. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, grateful for the momentary escape. Look after the team for me. What will you do? He asked, holding the door open, his loyalty touching her even in her shock. What everyone does in Silicon Valley, she said, summoning a smile she didn't feel. Pivot. The doors closed, and only then did Sophia allow herself to lean against the wall, eyes closed, breath coming in short gasps. Her mind raced through calculations. Her savings would cover rent for 3 months, maybe 4 if she was careful. Her father's treatment would drain that in weeks. In the parking garage, she sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, unable to start the engine. The reality of what had just happened was sinking in, each implication more devastating than the last. She had been publicly humiliated at the pinnacle of her success, her reputation potentially irreparably damaged in an industry where perception was everything. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Michael. Dad's asking for you. How soon can you come home? Sophia stared at the message, her vision blurring with unshed tears. She had moved to San Francisco from Seattle 2 years ago for this job, leaving her brother to shoulder most of their father's care. The astronomical salary had made the separation worthwhile, allowing them to afford the best treatments and in-home care. Now what? She finally started the car, forcing herself to focus on practical next steps. She needed to clear out her office tonight, before her access was revoked. She needed to call her father. She needed to update her resume and start reaching out to contacts. Back in the Horizon building, the late hour meant the main floors were deserted. Sophia used her keycard, still active for another few hours, and made her way to her office on the executive floor. The glass-walled space offered a panoramic view of the city she'd grown to love, lights twinkling like the career opportunities that had seemed so promising just hours ago. She began methodically packing her belongings, separating personal items from company property. 2 years of her life fit into a depressingly small box. A few framed photos, awards that suddenly seemed hollow, the special pen her father had given her when she'd landed the job. I thought you might still be here. Sophia looked up to find Eliza Rivera, Horizon's HR director, standing in her doorway. Unlike most at the gala, Eliza's expression held genuine sympathy. Just cleaning out my desk, Sophia said, gesturing to the half-filled box, saving the security team the trouble of escorting me out tomorrow. Eliza stepped inside, closing the door behind her. For what it's worth, I fought this. The entire executive committee did, except for David. David Nelson, Nolan's loyal CFO and yes-man. The launch was brilliant, Sophia. Everyone knows it. Everyone except the only person whose opinion matters. Sophia couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Did you know he was going to announce it like that? In front of everyone? Eliza winced. No, that was unexpected and unnecessary. That's Nolan for you. Maximum impact, minimum empathy. Sophia placed another award in her box. What does my severance look like? Eliza hesitated, and Sophia's stomach dropped further. 3 weeks. Pay, Eliza finally said, her discomfort evident. Standard for employees under 3 years. 3 weeks. Sophia struggled to keep her voice level. I'm an executive who just led a 9-figure product launch. I know. It's the new policy Nolan implemented last quarter. I tried to argue for an exception, but he refused. Sophia finished for her. Of course he did. Eliza placed a folder on the desk. Your health insurance continues until the end of the month. I've included information about Cobra for continued coverage. Sophia thought of her father's medical bills, the specialized care he needed. Cobra would cost thousands she didn't have. Thank you, she said automatically, the professional mask slipping back into place. If there's anything I can do, Eliza trailed off, both of them knowing there was little she could offer that would make a difference. Just look after the marketing team. They worked hard on this launch. Eliza nodded and left Sophia to finish packing in solitude. By midnight, the small box containing her professional life sat on the passenger seat of her car as she drove through the empty streets of San Francisco to her apartment. The next morning, Sophia awoke to her phone exploding with notifications. News of her dismissal had spread through Silicon Valley's gossip channels, amplified by the public nature of the announcement. There were messages of support from colleagues, inquiries from recruiters sensing an opportunity, and even a few journalists seeking comment on her dramatic exit from Horizon. She ignored them all, focusing instead on a video call with her father and brother in Seattle. "It's just a job, Butterfly," her father said, using the childhood nickname that never failed to warm her heart. Despite the tremors that shook his hands and the new lines of pain around his eyes, James Chen's spirit remained unbroken. "You were brilliant before Horizon, and you'll be brilliant after." "Dad's right," Michael added, his expression betraying more worry than his words. Silicon Valley companies are always poaching talent. "You'll have 10 offers by next week." Sophia forced a smile, not wanting to burden them with the reality of being publicly fired by a high-profile CEO. In the insular world of tech, such spectacles created a taint that competing companies were often hesitant to touch, and the family couldn't afford for her to be unemployed for long. "Of course," she said. "I've already had some interest. How are you feeling, Dad? How was the doctor's appointment?" The conversation shifted to her father's health, the new treatment options, and the specialist's recommendations. Sophia took detailed notes, asking pointed questions about costs and insurance coverage. By the time the call ended, she had a clearer picture of what they were facing, and it was daunting. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia's initial optimism faded as reality set in. Despite her impressive resume and the objectively successful product launch, interviews were scarce. When they did materialize, there was always an awkward moment when the interviewer delicately broached the subject of her departure from Horizon. "Creative differences with leadership," she would say diplomatically, but the damage was done. In an industry where companies poached successful executives with abandon, being publicly discarded raised questions no one wanted to ask directly. By the 3rd week, Sophia had expanded her search beyond Silicon Valley, applying for positions in Seattle to be closer to her family. The offers that did come were for roles several levels below her previous position, with corresponding salary cuts that would make supporting her father's care impossible. 1 month after the gala, Sophia sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by spreadsheets detailing her dwindling finances, when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Sophia Chen," she answered, her professional tone automatic. "Ms. Chen, this is Patricia Weaver, Mr. Reid's executive assistant." Sophia's grip tightened on the phone. "What can I do for you, Patricia?" "Mr. Reid would like to schedule a meeting with you at your earliest convenience." A bitter laugh escaped before Sophia could stop it. "I think Mr. Reid said everything he needed to say at the gala. He insisted it was important," Patricia continued, her tone carefully neutral. "He's willing to meet wherever you're comfortable." "Why? Does he want to fire me again for good measure?" There was a pause on the other end. He didn't provide details, but he seemed urgent. Sophia considered hanging up. Nothing Nolan Reid could say would undo the damage he'd caused to her career, to her family's stability, to her professional reputation. But curiosity and a small, vindictive desire to see him squirm won out. Tomorrow, noon, Crispin's Cafe on Valencia. She named a small, public place where she wouldn't feel trapped. "Tell him he has 15 minutes. I'll confirm with Mr. Reid and send you a calendar invite," Patricia replied, professional to the last. After hanging up, Sophia stared at her phone, wondering what possible reason Nolan could have for wanting to see her. Perhaps a competitor had poached her marketing strategy. Maybe the numbers had fallen since her departure. Or, most likely, he needed her to sign some legal document his lawyers had overlooked. Whatever it was, she promised herself she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing how much damage he'd done. Tomorrow, she would face marketing team. They worked hard on this launch. Eliza nodded and left Sophia to finish packing in solitude. By midnight, the small box containing her professional life sat on the passenger seat of her car as she drove through the empty streets of San Francisco to her apartment. The next morning, Sophia awoke to her phone exploding with notifications. News of her dismissal had spread through Silicon Valley's gossip channels, amplified by the public nature of the announcement. There were messages of support from colleagues, inquiries from recruiters sensing an opportunity, and even a few journalists seeking comment on her dramatic exit from Horizon. She ignored them all, focusing instead on a video call with her father and brother in Seattle. "It's just a job, Butterfly," her father said, using the childhood nickname that never failed to warm her heart. Despite the tremors that shook his hands and the new lines of pain around his eyes, James Chen's spirit remained unbroken. "You were brilliant before Horizon, and you'll be brilliant after." "Dad's right," Michael added, his expression betraying more worry than his words. Silicon Valley companies are always poaching talent. You'll have 10 offers by next week. Sophia forced a smile, not wanting to burden them with the reality of being publicly fired by a high-profile CEO. In the insular world of tech, such spectacles created a taint that competing companies were often hesitant to touch, and the family couldn't afford for her to be unemployed for long. "Of course," she said. "I've already had some interest. How are you feeling, Dad? How was the doctor's appointment?" The conversation shifted to her father's health, the new treatment options, and the specialist's recommendations. Sophia took detailed notes, asking pointed questions about costs and insurance coverage. By the time the call ended, she had a clearer picture of what they were facing, and it was daunting. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia's initial optimism faded as reality set in. Despite her impressive resume and the objectively successful product launch, interviews were scarce. When they did materialize, there was always an awkward moment when the interviewer delicately broached the subject of her departure from Horizon. Creative differences with leadership, she would say diplomatically, but the damage was done. In an industry where companies poached successful executives with abandon, being publicly discarded raised questions no one wanted to ask directly. By the 3rd week, Sophia had expanded her search beyond Silicon Valley, applying for positions in Seattle to be closer to her family. The offers that did come were for roles several levels below her previous position, with corresponding salary cuts that would make supporting her father's care impossible. 1 month after the gala, Sophia sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by spreadsheets detailing her dwindling finances, when her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Sophia Chen," she answered, her professional tone automatic. "Miss Chen, this is Patricia Weaver, Mr. Reid's executive assistant." Sophia's grip tightened on the phone. "What can I do for you, Patricia?" "Mr. Reid would like to schedule a meeting with you at your earliest convenience." A bitter laugh escaped before Sophia could stop it. "I think Mr. Reid said everything he needed to say at the gala. He insisted it was important," Patricia continued, her tone carefully neutral. "He's willing to meet wherever you're comfortable." "Why? Does he want to fire me again for good measure?" There was a pause on the other end. He didn't provide details, but he seemed urgent. Sophia considered hanging up. Nothing Nolan Reid could say would undo the damage he'd caused, to her career, to her family's stability, to her professional reputation, but curiosity and a small, vindictive desire to see him squirm won out. "Tomorrow, noon. Crispin's Cafe on Valencia." She named a small, public place where she wouldn't feel trapped. "Tell him he has 15 minutes. I'll confirm with Mr. Reid and send you a calendar invite," Patricia replied, professional to the last. After hanging up, Sophia stared at her phone, wondering what possible reason Nolan could have for wanting to see her. Perhaps a competitor had poached her marketing strategy. Maybe the numbers had fallen since her departure. Or, most likely, he needed her to sign some legal document his lawyers had overlooked. Whatever it was, she promised herself she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing how much damage he'd done. Tomorrow, she would face eyes directly. "But it's more than that. Enlighten me." Nolan glanced around the cafe, seeming uncomfortable with the public setting for the first time. "The board is moving to replace me. David Nelson is leading the charge, gathering support from investors. They're claiming my impulsive leadership is damaging the company." Now the full picture emerged. Nolan wasn't just trying to save the platform. He was trying to save his position. The great Nolan Reid, tech wunderkind, was facing the same fate he'd dealt to countless others, including her. "So you need me to save your job," Sophia said, unable to keep the irony from her voice. "I need you to save Horizon," he corrected. "The company needs stability right now, someone the teams trust. That's you, not me." Sophia studied him, searching for the manipulation behind the flattery. "And if I accept, how long until you decide to go in a different direction again, until you publicly humiliate me for a second time?" Nolan's expression hardened. "That's in the contract too. You report directly to the board, not to me. I can't fire you without board approval." The conversation was surreal. A month ago, this man had dismissed her contributions and fired her without a second thought. Now he was offering her more power than she'd ever had, protection from his notorious volatility, and enough money to solve her most pressing problems. It was the answer to everything she'd been worrying about, so why did it feel hollow? "Time's up," Sophia said, closing the folder and sliding it back across the table. "I need to think about this." "The board meets on Friday," Nolan said, making no move to take the folder. "I need an answer before then." "You'll have one." Sophia stood, gathering her belongings. "Goodbye, Nolan." As she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her back, and for the first time since the gala, she felt a small measure of her power return. Nolan Reid needed her, and they both knew it. Outside the cafe, Sophia took a deep breath of the cool San Francisco air, her mind racing. The offer was impossible to ignore, addressing every practical concern she faced, yet something felt wrong about returning to Horizon, about working alongside the man who had discarded her so carelessly. She pulled out her phone and dialed her brother. "He offered me my job back," she said when Michael answered. "Triple the salary, executive position, board seat." There was a pause on the other end. "The same guy who fired you in front of everyone? Why?" "The product's failing without me, and apparently the board is trying to oust him." Michael whistled low. "Karma's working overtime. What are you going to do?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted. "The money would solve everything with Dad's treatment." "But working with Nolan again. Is it the same job? Same boss?" "No, I'd be higher up, reporting to the board instead of directly to him." "Then take it," Michael said without hesitation. "Use him like he used you. Get the title, the experience, the money. And when something better comes along, walk away without looking back." His practical advice made sense, but something still bothered her. "I'd be saving his job, Michael, after what he did." "So make him work for it," her brother suggested. "Make him acknowledge what he did. Use this leverage while you have it." As Sophia walked back to her apartment, her brother's words echoed in her mind. She had leverage, perhaps for the first and only time in her relationship with Nolan Reid. What would it take for her to feel right about accepting his offer? By the time she reached her building, she had her answer. She took out her phone and typed a message to the number Patricia had called from. "I'll consider the offer on one condition. Nolan apologizes in person, in front of the same people who witnessed my dismissal." She hit send before she could second-guess herself, then waited for the inevitable rejection. Nolan Reid didn't apologize to anyone. The response came less than 5 minutes later. "Mr. Reid agrees to your condition. He asks how you would like this arranged." Sophia stared at her phone in disbelief. Nolan had agreed, not negotiated, not countered, but simply accepted her demand. It was so unlike him that for a moment, she wondered if Patricia was acting without his knowledge. As she formulated her response, Sophia realized she had the opportunity to reclaim not just her career, but her dignity. The humiliation of that night had left scars that no salary could heal. If Nolan wanted her help badly enough to humble himself publicly, perhaps there was more to this situation than simple business pragmatism. "All-hands company meeting," she typed. "Tomorrow at 10 a.m. I'll be there." The die was cast. Tomorrow would determine whether she could rebuild what Nolan had broken, not just the Nexus platform, but her faith in her own abilities and her place in the industry she loved. And perhaps, though she was reluctant to admit it even to herself, it would reveal whether there was more to Nolan Reid than the callous CEO who had cast her aside when it suited him. The next morning, Sophia woke before her alarm, her mind already racing with scenarios for the day ahead. She dressed with particular care, choosing a structured crimson dress that made her feel armored and confident. The bold color was intentional. She wanted to be visible, impossible to ignore when she walked into Horizon's headquarters. As she applied her makeup, Sophia studied her reflection. The woman who stared back had changed in the months since her firing. There was a new wariness in her eyes, but also a hardness that hadn't been there before. She had survived one of the most humiliating moments of her professional life, and somehow she was walking back into the lion's den on her own terms. Her phone buzzed with a text from Michael. "Dad and I are rooting for you. Make him grovel." Sophia smiled, feeling a surge of gratitude for her family's unwavering support. Whatever happened today, she had people who believed in her when it mattered most. The Uber dropped her at Horizon's towering headquarters at 9:45 a.m. Sophia paused outside, taking in the familiar glass facade where she had spent countless hours building her career. A month ago, she had left this building in humiliation. Today, she would enter it on her own terms. In the lobby, heads turned as she approached the security desk. The guard's eyes widened in recognition. "Ms. Chen, I didn't realize you were back." "I'm here for the all-hands meeting," she said, maintaining her composure despite the curious stares from employees passing through the lobby. "Of course." Mr. Reid's office called down. "You're pre-authorized." He handed her a visitor badge, a small reminder that she was still an outsider. As Sophia rode the elevator to the main conference level, she fought to calm her racing heart. The stakes were impossibly high, not just for her career, but for her dignity. If Nolan reneged on their agreement, if he minimized his apology or twisted it into something self-serving, she would walk away regardless of the financial consequences. The elevator doors opened onto a scene of organized chaos. Horizon's entire San Francisco workforce, nearly 400 people, was filtering into the main auditorium. Sophia lingered at the periphery, watching as familiar faces found seats, buzzing with speculation about the unexpected meeting. "Sophia?" She turned to find Marcus pushing through the crowd toward her, his face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "It's true," he said, reaching her side. "You're coming back?" "That depends on what happens in the next 30 minutes, she replied, touched by his enthusiasm. "The place has been a disaster without you," Marcus confided, lowering his voice. "Mercer lasted all of 3 weeks before Reid fired him in a budget meeting. The Nexus numbers are tanking, and the marketing team is completely demoralized." "So I've heard," Sophia said, scanning the crowd. "How are things with you?" "Hanging in there. I've been trying to keep the team focused, but—" He broke off, his expression darkening. "There's Reid now." Sophia followed his gaze to where Nolan had entered from a side door, accompanied by Patricia and several board members. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his posture, the tightness around his eyes as he surveyed the gathering crowd. When his gaze found her, something shifted in his expression, a flicker of what might have been relief, quickly masked by his usual impassive demeanor. He nodded almost imperceptibly in her direction. "Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats." Patricia's voice came over the sound system. "Mr. Reid would like to begin." "I should find my team," Marcus said, squeezing Sophia's arm supportively. "Good luck with whatever this is." As the room settled, Sophia remained standing at the back, her heart pounding but her expression carefully neutral. This was Nolan's show. Let him make the first move. The auditorium quieted as Nolan took the stage, the same stage from which he had announced her firing a month earlier. The symmetry wasn't lost on anyone, least of all Sophia. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Nolan began, his voice carrying effortlessly through the space. "I know there have been a lot of changes at Horizon recently, and a lot of uncertainty. Today is about addressing that uncertainty head-on." He paused, scanning the audience with those penetrating green eyes. "A month ago, at our launch gala, I made a decision that I presented as being in the best interest of this company. I removed Sophia Chen from her position as marketing director and replaced her with Jonathan Mercer." The room was utterly silent, hundreds of employees holding their collective breath. This kind of public admission from Nolan was unprecedented. "That decision was a mistake," Nolan continued, each word seeming to cost him visible effort. "Not just a business error, though the numbers certainly reflect that, but a personal failure of judgment and leadership on my part." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Sophia felt a curious lightness in her chest, as if a weight she'd been carrying was beginning to lift. "As many of you have noticed, the Nexus platform is struggling. User retention is down, press coverage has turned negative, and our stock price is reflecting these challenges. The easy explanation would be to blame market conditions or technical issues." He paused, his gaze finding Sophia at the back of the room. "But the truth is simpler and harder to admit. Nexus is struggling because I removed the person whose vision and strategy were integral to its success. I undervalued Sophia's contributions, dismissed her expertise, and made a decision based on ego rather than evidence." The admission hung in the air, shocking in its directness. Nolan Reid, notorious for his unapologetic leadership style, was publicly acknowledging a mistake. His mistake. I could stand here and offer business justifications, talk about restructuring and strategic pivots, but the reality is that I owe Sophia Chen an apology, not just privately, but here, in front of the same people who witnessed her dismissal. Sophia felt hundreds of eyes turn toward her, but she kept her gaze steady on Nolan, refusing to look away as he continued. Sophia, what I did was wrong. The way I handled your departure was unprofessional, unnecessary, and frankly, cruel. You deserved better, both as an executive who had contributed enormously to this company's success, and as a person. To Sophia's astonishment, Nolan stepped down from the stage and began walking toward the back of the auditorium where she stood. The crowd parted before him, creating a path through the center of the room. When he reached her, standing just a few feet away, his voice lowered, though the microphone still carried his words throughout the silent room. I'm asking you to consider returning to Horizon, not as marketing director, but as our new chief marketing officer, with a seat on the executive board and full strategic authority over the Nexus platform. Then, in a move that sent a collective gasp through the room, Nolan Reid, billionaire CEO, tech wonderkind, notorious for his unbending pride, lowered himself to one knee before her. I'm asking for your forgiveness and for a second chance, not just for me, but for the company and the platform we built together. Time seemed to stand still as Sophia looked down at the kneeling figure of the man who had shattered her career a month earlier. The gesture was so unexpected, so completely contrary to everything she knew about Nolan Reid, that for a moment she wondered if this was some elaborate performance orchestrated for the benefit of watching employees. But the vulnerability in his eyes seemed genuine, a rare glimpse behind the arrogant mask he typically wore. "Stand up, Nolan," she said quietly, uncomfortable with his kneeling position despite everything he had done. "This isn't necessary." He rose slowly, his eyes never leaving hers. "It is necessary," he said, his voice carrying in the silent room. "I needed everyone to understand that I recognize the gravity of my mistake." Sophia was acutely aware of the hundreds of witnesses to this extraordinary scene, of the story that would race through Silicon Valley by lunchtime, Nolan Reid on his knees, begging for forgiveness from the woman he had publicly humiliated. It was a vindication she couldn't have imagined a day earlier. Yet, strangely, it brought her less satisfaction than she had expected. There was something almost painful in seeing such a proud man deliberately humble himself, even one who had caused her such harm. "I accept your apology," she said clearly, ensuring her words would reach the farthest corners of the room. "And I accept the position." A wave of applause broke out, starting with the marketing team and quickly spreading throughout the auditorium. The relief on Nolan's face was palpable, though he quickly masked it with his more familiar confident expression. "Thank you," he said, for her ears only as the applause continued. "You won't regret this." "I might," Sophia countered softly, "but I'm willing to find out." Nolan turned back to address the room, his composure restored. "I'm pleased to announce that Sophia Chen is rejoining Horizon as our new Chief Marketing Officer. Effective immediately, please join me in welcoming her back." The applause intensified, accompanied by cheers from her former team. Sophia smiled, acknowledging the warm response, though her mind was already racing ahead to the challenges that awaited her. The Nexus platform was in trouble, the marketing team demoralized, and she would be working alongside a man whose mercurial nature had upended her life once before. As the meeting dispersed, employees stopped to welcome her back, many offering sincere expressions of relief and support. Marcus orchestrated an impromptu celebration with the marketing team, producing champagne from somewhere and making a toast to her return. Through it all, Sophia maintained her professional smile, accepting congratulations while observing Nolan from across the room. He was deep in conversation with board members, his expression serious but no longer carrying the tension she had noticed earlier. He had gotten what he wanted, her expertise to save his struggling platform, and, by extension, his position as CEO. But as Sophia surveyed the bright faces of her team, felt the genuine enthusiasm for her return, she realized something important. She hadn't come back for Nolan. She had come back for herself, for the work she loved, for the platform she had helped build, and for the team that clearly valued her leadership. Later that afternoon, after meetings with HR to finalize her new contract and sessions with the marketing team to assess the current state of the Nexus campaign, Sophia found herself alone in her new office, a corner suite befitting her executive status. The space was 3 times larger than her previous office, with views of both the bay and the city skyline. She was arranging her few personal items, the family photos, her father's pen, when a knock came at the open door. Nolan stood in the doorway, his tall frame silhouetted against the hallway lights. "May I come in?" he asked, a question rather than his usual assumption of access. Sophia nodded, curious about what more he could have to say after the morning's extraordinary events. Nolan entered but remained standing, his hands in his pockets, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I wanted to thank you again, privately this time. What you saw today in the auditorium wasn't just for show." "I know," Sophia said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "You wouldn't have knelt if it was just theatrics. Your ego wouldn't allow it." A small smile tugged at his lips. "You know me better than I thought. I've worked directly with you for 2 years, Nolan. I've seen you at your best and your worst. Today was something new entirely." He moved to the window, gazing out at the San Francisco skyline. "The board gave me an ultimatum last week. Fix Nexus or step down as CEO. And you decided I was the fix," Sophia stated. Neither accusation nor question. Nolan turned to face her. "Yes, initially. But when I saw the numbers, really saw what was happening to the platform without your guidance, it became clear that my decision to remove you was monumentally stupid. Not just for Horizon, but for the users who believed in what we were building." "What changed?" Sophia asked, the question that had been nagging at her since his surprising capitulation to her demand for a public apology. "A month ago you dismissed my work as secondary to the product. Now you're saying it was integral." Nolan ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of discomfort. "Pride. Arrogance. Take your pick. I convinced myself that Nexus succeeded because of the engineering, the revolutionary algorithm. I wanted to believe the marketing was window dressing. And now? Now I understand that the story you built around Nexus, the community you were cultivating, the purpose you gave it beyond just being another AI tool, that was what made users connect with it. When Mercer dismantled your strategy in favor of aggressive growth tactics, we lost that connection. Users stopped seeing Nexus as part of their creative process and started seeing it as just another tech product." The analysis was surprisingly insightful, revealing a depth of understanding Sophia hadn't expected from someone who had so thoroughly dismissed her contribution. "You could have hired another CMO," she pointed out, "someone without our complicated history." "I could have," Nolan agreed, "but they wouldn't be you. They wouldn't have your vision for Nexus, your understanding of our user base, your relationship with the team." He hesitated, then added, "And they wouldn't have given me the opportunity to try to make things right." Sophia studied him, trying to reconcile this reflective version of Nolan with the callous CEO who had fired her without a second thought. "Is that what today was about, making things right?" "Partly," he admitted, "but it was also about acknowledging a truth I've been avoiding. Horizon needs you more than you need Horizon. You have options. I needed to demonstrate that I understand that." The frank admission surprised her. "So the kneeling, that was strategic?" The apology was genuine. Nolan said carefully, "The form it took. Let's say I understood what the situation required." Despite everything, Sophia found herself smiling. This was the Nolan she knew. Calculating, always thinking 3 moves ahead, yet capable of surprising honesty when it served his purpose. "Well, it worked," she said. "I'm here. Now we need to focus on saving Nexus." Nolan nodded, visibly relieved to shift to business matters. "I've given you full access to all platform data and user feedback. The engineering team has been instructed to prioritize your requests. Whatever you need, it's yours." "I'll need time with the user research team first," Sophia said, her mind already mapping out a strategy. "And I want to review all the changes Mercer implemented before we start undoing them." "Done." Nolan moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. Your father's medical treatments. I took the liberty of having our benefits team set up expedited coverage. It should be active as of this morning." Sophia stared at him, momentarily speechless. Her father's treatment had been her most pressing concern, the main practical reason for accepting Nolan's offer. That he had prioritized this without being asked suggested a level of consideration she hadn't thought him capable of. "Thank you," she said simply, unsure how else to respond to this unexpected gesture. Nolan nodded, seeming almost embarrassed by her gratitude. "It was the least I could do. I'll let you get settled in." As he left, Sophia sank into her chair, trying to process the whirlwind of the day's events. In the span of 24 hours, she had gone from unemployed and struggling to an executive position with more power and compensation than she had ever imagined possible. More importantly, she had reclaimed her dignity in the most public way possible, with the man who had taken it from her literally on his knees before her. It was a victory by any measure, a complete reversal of fortune that should have left her feeling triumphant. Yet as she looked around her spacious new office, Sophia felt a curious ambivalence. She had what she wanted: the position, the authority, the resources to help her family. But she had also tied her future once again to Nolan Reid, a man whose actions had proven him capable of breathtaking callousness and surprising humility in equal measure. Who was the real Nolan? The arrogant CEO who had dismissed her so casually, or the man who had knelt before her in a room full of employees? And more importantly, could she trust either version with her career a second time? Sophia turned to her computer, pushing these questions aside. Time would reveal the answers, but for now, she had a platform to save and a team to rebuild. Whatever Nolan's true nature, she was back at Horizon on her terms, with the authority and visibility she had earned. That evening, as Sophia packed up to leave, she found a small package on her desk that hadn't been there earlier. Inside was a sleek leather notebook with her initials embossed in gold and a handwritten note. "For your next world-changing idea, welcome back. N.R." The gesture was simple yet thoughtful, acknowledging both her past contributions and future potential. As Sophia ran her fingers over the fine leather, she couldn't help wondering if perhaps there was more to Nolan Reid than she had allowed herself to see, depths beneath the arrogant exterior that might be worth exploring. She tucked the notebook into her bag and headed home, a cautious optimism taking root alongside her lingering wariness. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight she would celebrate with her family, sharing the news that her father's treatment was secured and her career back on track. Whatever happened next with Nolan Reid, Sophia had reclaimed her power and her place. That was a victory worth savoring, even if the road ahead remained uncertain. Over the next 3 months, Horizon Technologies transformed under Sophia's leadership. The Nexus platform, once spiraling toward failure, had not only stabilized but was growing again, with user retention numbers climbing steadily each week. The marketing team, reinvigorated by her return, had implemented a complete strategic overhaul that reconnected users with the platform's core values. Today marked another milestone, the quarterly board meeting where Sophia would present the full recovery data. As she put the finishing touches on her presentation, in her office, a text from her father brightened her morning. "The doctor says the new treatment is working, Butterfly. Tremors down by 30%. Proud of you." Sophia smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. Her father's improvement was the sweetest fruit of her return to Horizon. The comprehensive healthcare package that came with her executive position covered experimental treatments that would have been financially impossible otherwise. For that alone, she could never regret her decision to accept Nolan's offer. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Patricia, Nolan's ever-efficient assistant, stood in the doorway. "The board members are arriving, Ms. Chen. Mr. Reid asked if you could join the welcome reception." "Thank you, Patricia. I'll be right there." Alone again, Sophia took a moment to center herself. These past months had been a delicate balancing act. Rebuilding the platform while establishing her new authority, collaborating with Nolan while maintaining professional boundaries. They had developed an effective working relationship, but she remained vigilant, never quite forgetting the lesson of her public dismissal. The boardroom reception area hummed with conversation when Sophia arrived. Board members mingled with Horizon's executive team, the atmosphere noticeably more relaxed than at the last quarterly meeting when the company's future had seemed uncertain. Sophia greeted several board members, accepting their congratulations on Nexus's turnaround with gracious professionalism. She was discussing user engagement metrics with the head of the investment committee when Nolan appeared at her side. "Sorry to interrupt," he said smoothly, "but there's someone I'd like Sophia to meet before we start." He guided her toward an elegant older woman standing near the windows, her silver hair styled in a sleek bob that complemented her tailored navy suit. "Sophia, this is Victoria Hargrove, our newest board member." "Victoria." Sophia Chen, our Chief Marketing Officer and the architect behind Nexus's recovery. Victoria extended her hand, her grip firm and confident. Ms. Chen, I've heard impressive things about your work. That was quite a resurrection you engineered. Thank you, Ms. Hargrove. We had a strong foundation to build on, and an exceptional team. And remarkable leadership, from what I understand. Victoria's sharp eyes moved between Sophia and Nolan. Not many executives would have the courage to return after such a public dismissal, nor would many CEOs humble themselves so completely to make amends. Sophia maintained her professional smile, though she felt a familiar tightness in her chest at the reference to her firing. Despite her success since returning, the memory still stung. We both recognized what was best for Horizon, she said diplomatically. Victoria's knowing smile suggested she read more into the response than Sophia had intended. Indeed. Well, I look forward to your presentation, Ms. Chen. The numbers I've seen in advance are quite compelling. As Victoria moved away to greet another board member, Nolan turned to Sophia. She's impressed. Victoria doesn't impress easily. Who is she exactly? I don't remember her from previous board materials. Major investor, tech industry veteran. She founded Hargrove Systems in the 90s, sold it for billions in 2010. She's been looking at Horizon for years, but only agreed to join the board after our recent turnaround. Nolan's expression was hard to read. She's also David Nelson's aunt. Sophia raised an eyebrow. David Nelson, Horizon's CFO and Nolan's former ally, had become increasingly adversarial in recent months, challenging Sophia's strategies in executive meetings and questioning her budget allocations. Interesting family connection, she noted. Should I be concerned? Just be your usual brilliant self, Nolan said, his confidence in her evident. Victoria makes her own judgments, regardless of family ties. The boardroom doors opened, and Patricia announced that the meeting was about to begin. As they took their seats around the polished table, Sophia felt a flutter of anticipation. This presentation represented months of strategic work, late nights, and bold decisions that had initially met resistance from various corners of the company, including from Nolan himself. Board Chairman William Chen, no relation to Sophia, called the meeting to order, reviewing the agenda before turning to Nolan for his opening remarks. 3 months ago, Nolan began, his commanding presence filling the room, Horizon was facing a crisis of confidence. Our flagship platform was failing, our stock was plummeting, and many in this room were questioning whether a change in leadership was necessary. He paused, his gaze sweeping the table. Those questions were valid. I had made a serious error in judgment that nearly cost this company its future. But today I'm proud to report that Horizon is not only stable but thriving, thanks largely to the executive I'll be introducing shortly. Sophia listened with measured surprise. Nolan was giving her credit openly, without qualification or attempt to share in the glory. Another departure from his previous leadership style. Nexus user retention has increased by 67%. Our stock has not only recovered but reached new highs. And most importantly, we've reestablished the trust of our user community. Nolan turned toward Sophia. None of this would have been possible without the vision and leadership of our Chief Marketing Officer, Sophia Chen. I'll now turn the presentation over to her. As Sophia stood to take the floor, she noted the genuine respect in Nolan's eyes, so different from the dismissive glance he had given her the night of her firing. Something had shifted between them over these months of collaboration, a mutual recognition of each other's strengths that had evolved into what might almost be called friendship. Her presentation was comprehensive but concise, detailing the strategic pivots that had saved Nexus from irrelevance. She explained how they had refocused on the platform's original promise, enhancing human creativity rather than replacing it, and rebuilt the community engagement that had been Nexus's early strength. The core insight, Sophia explained, displaying a slide with user feedback quotes, was that people weren't connecting with Nexus as a tool, but as a creative partner. When we shifted our messaging from revolutionary AI to your creative companion, engagement doubled overnight. The board members nodded, several taking notes. Victoria Hargrove watched with particular intensity, her sharp eyes missing nothing. The second phase involved rebuilding trust with early adopters who felt abandoned by the platform's direction under previous leadership. Sophia continued, careful not to directly reference Jonathan Mercer's brief, disastrous tenure. We created the Nexus Pioneers program, giving our most loyal users direct input into feature development. She clicked to the next slide, revealing impressive growth metrics. The results speak for themselves. Monthly active users up 43%, subscription renewals increased by 59%. And most importantly, our Net Promoter Score has risen from a concerning 27 to an industry-leading 68. As Sophia concluded her presentation, the board's response was overwhelmingly positive. Questions focused on scaling strategies and international expansion rather than the defensive queries about declining numbers that had dominated previous meetings. Even David Nelson, who had been skeptical of her approaches from the beginning, limited his challenges to clarifying questions about marketing spend efficiency. After the formal presentations concluded, the board voted unanimously to approve Sophia's proposed budget for the next 2 quarters, a vote of confidence that validated her strategy and cemented her position within Horizon's leadership. As the meeting adjourned and board members filtered out, Victoria Hargrove approached Sophia again. "Impressive work, Ms. Chen. You've clearly earned your position here." She glanced toward Nolan, who was deep in conversation with William Chen across the room. "Though I must admit, I'm curious about something." "What's that, Miss Hargrove?" "Why you came back?" Victoria's directness was refreshing after months of careful corporate politics. After such a public humiliation, most executives would have moved on, especially with your talents. Yet here you are, saving the company, and by extension, the man who fired you. Why? The question caught Sophia off guard. She had asked herself the same thing many times over the past months, never quite settling on a simple answer. Initially, practical considerations, she admitted. The compensation package solved some pressing family medical needs. And the position itself, CMO with board influence, was an opportunity I couldn't find elsewhere in the current market. Victoria nodded. The practical always matters. But I suspect there's more to it. Sophia considered her next words carefully. I believed in Nexus. I helped build it from concept to launch. Walking away when it was struggling felt like abandoning my own creation. She paused, and perhaps I wanted to prove something to myself as much as to anyone else. That you were indispensable? Victoria suggested. That I could rebuild what was broken, Sophia corrected. Even after everything that happened. Victoria studied her with newfound respect. Impressive perspective. Most people in your position would be focused on vindication or revenge. Those emotions don't build anything worthwhile, Sophia said simply. No, they don't. Victoria smiled. Horizon is fortunate to have you, Miss Chen. I look forward to seeing what you build next. As Victoria departed, Nolan approached, his expression curious. What did Victoria want? To understand my motivations, Sophia replied. She seemed satisfied with my answers. That's significant. Victoria doesn't waste time on executives she doesn't see as key players. Nolan hesitated. The board's reaction to your presentation was the most positive I've seen in over a year. They're talking about accelerating the international expansion based on your growth projections. That's good news for everyone, Sophia acknowledged. It's a personal victory for you, Nolan corrected. You should celebrate it. Sophia gathered her presentation materials, surprised by his generous framing. The team deserves the credit. They executed the strategy brilliantly. Your strategy, your leadership. Nolan's voice softened. Sophia, I know we don't talk about what happened, but watching you today, seeing how you've transformed Nexus and won over the board, I'm reminded of how catastrophically wrong I was to let you go. The acknowledgement hung between them, more personal than his public apology had been. For the first time, Sophia sensed that Nolan's regret went beyond business considerations. We've moved forward, she said carefully. That's what matters now. Have we? Nolan's green eyes held hers. Sometimes I wonder if we've just gotten better at working around the damage. Before Sophia could respond, Patricia appeared with an urgent message for Nolan, ending the moment. As he excused himself to handle the matter, Sophia was left pondering his words and the unexpected vulnerability behind them. That evening, the executive team gathered at Lumiere, an exclusive restaurant overlooking the bay, to celebrate the successful board meeting. The private dining room hummed with conversation and laughter, the atmosphere more relaxed than Sophia had experienced since rejoining Horizon. She was discussing marketing strategies with the CTO when David Nelson approached, champagne flute in hand. Congratulations on the board presentation, he said. His tone pleasant, though his eyes remained calculating. Victoria was quite impressed, and she's not easily swayed. Thank you, David. Your financial projections were equally well received. He inclined his head in acknowledgement. You've accomplished quite a turnaround with Nexus. It's almost miraculous, considering the state it was in when you returned. Something in his emphasis made Sophia wary. The platform had good bones. It just needed reconnection with its core values. Indeed. David swirled his champagne thoughtfully. Though some of us wonder if the success is sustainable without the dramatic circumstances that brought you back. Meaning Nolan's very public. What shall we call it? Penitence? His smile didn't reach his eyes. It made for quite a story, the mighty CEO on his knees. Very effective theater. Sophia maintained her professional composure despite her rising irritation. I think the quarterly results speak for themselves, regardless of how my return was orchestrated. Of course they do, David agreed smoothly. I just find the dynamic between you and Nolan fascinating. From public humiliation to public prostration, and now this curious partnership. One wonders where it leads next. Before Sophia could respond, Nolan appeared at her side, his timing impeccable as always. David, I see you found our woman of the hour, he said lightly, though Sophia detected tension beneath his casual tone. I hope you're not trying to poach her for the finance department. David laughed, the sound hollow. Just offering my congratulations. Sophia's achievement with Nexus is remarkable, especially given the challenging history. History is just that, history, Nolan replied. Sophia's future at Horizon is what interests me, and I suspect the rest of the board as well, including your aunt. Something flickered across David's face, annoyance perhaps that Victoria had formed her own positive opinion of Sophia despite whatever narrative he might have tried to establish. Indeed, he said finally. If you'll excuse me, I should greet the other board members. As David moved away, Nolan turned to Sophia. Sorry about that. David's been oddly confrontational lately. He's testing boundaries, Sophia observed. Trying to find fault with our partnership. Partnership, Nolan repeated, seeming to consider the word. Is that what we have? Professionally speaking, yes, Sophia said carefully. We found an effective way to collaborate despite our complicated history. Nolan studied her, his expression unreadable. Would you join me on the terrace for a moment? There's something I'd like to discuss away from the crowd. Curious and slightly wary, Sophia followed him through the glass doors onto the restaurant's private terrace. The night air was cool but pleasant, the lights of the Bay Bridge twinkling against the darkness like earthbound stars. Nolan moved to the railing, looking out over the water for a long moment before speaking. The board is considering a restructuring proposal. What kind of restructuring? Sophia asked, instantly alert. Creating a new position, President of Product and Innovation, with oversight of both engineering and marketing divisions. It would essentially be second in command to the CEO, with responsibility for Nexus and all future platform development. Sophia processed this information carefully. Such a position would represent a significant shift in Horizon's leadership structure and a potential threat to her autonomy if filled by someone with different strategic vision. Who are they considering for this role? She asked, though she suspected she already knew. Nolan turned to face her, the city lights illuminating his features. You. The board, led by Victoria Hargrove, has specifically requested that I offer you the position. The offer was stunning, far beyond what Sophia had imagined possible when she'd returned to Horizon. President of Product and Innovation would place her just one step below CEO, with expanded authority and influence over the company's entire product ecosystem. This is unexpected, she said finally. Is it? Nolan leaned against the railing, studying her. You've accomplished more in 3 months than most executives do in years. The board recognizes that. So do I. And how do you feel about it? Sophia asked directly. This was proposed without your initiative. It changes the power structure you've maintained since founding Horizon. Nolan's laugh held no humor. Always perceptive. Yes, initially I had reservations. I've never shared power willingly. And now? Now I recognize it's the right move for Horizon. He straightened, his expression earnest in a way she rarely witnessed. And the right recognition for you, Sophia. You've more than earned this. The sincerity in his voice surprised her. This wasn't the calculating Nolan she had come to expect, but something closer to the vulnerable man who had knelt before her months ago. What about David? She asked, practical concerns asserting themselves. As CFO, he might have expected to be next in line for a position like this. David was considered, Nolan acknowledged. But the board was unanimous that your vision and leadership made you the clear choice. Even Victoria, despite family loyalty, supported you. The weight of the opportunity settled on Sophia's shoulders. This wasn't just a promotion. It was a fundamental shift in her career trajectory and a chance to shape Horizon's future in ways she had never imagined possible. I'll need time to consider it, she said, not wanting to make such a momentous decision in the emotional aftermath of the board meeting's success. Of course. Nolan stepped closer, his expression uncharacteristically open. But before you decide, there's something else I need to say. Something that's been unsaid between us for too long. The intensity in his voice made Sophia wary. What is it? When I fired you that night, I made the worst mistake of my professional life. That much I've acknowledged publicly. He paused, seeming to struggle with his next words. What I haven't admitted, even to myself until recently, is that I also made the worst mistake of my personal life. Sophia stared at him, uncertain of his meaning. I don't understand. I've spent my career making decisions based on cold logic and business metrics, Nolan continued. I convinced myself that personal connections were liabilities, that emotional attachments clouded judgment. So when I began to feel something beyond professional respect for you, something that complicated my neat, ordered world, I reacted the way I always do to perceived threats. The implication of his words left Sophia momentarily speechless. Was Nolan Reid, the notoriously emotionally detached CEO, suggesting that personal feelings had influenced his decision to fire her? Are you saying you fired me because you had feelings for me? She finally asked, her disbelief evident. Not consciously, Nolan admitted. But looking back, yes. I felt myself becoming dependent on your perspective, valuing your presence beyond your professional contributions. It unsettled me. So when Mercer approached me about joining Horizon, I seized on it as a solution to a problem I couldn't acknowledge. The revelation cast their entire history in a new light. From their professional friction to the extraordinary lengths he had gone to bring her back. Why are you telling me this now? Sophia asked, struggling to process this new information alongside the already momentous offer of the president position. Because you deserve the full truth before deciding whether to accept a role that would bind your future more closely to mine. Nolan's gaze was direct, unshielded. And because these past months working with you have shown me that the connection I feared isn't a weakness but a strength, for me and for Horizon. Sophia took a step back, needing physical distance to think clearly. This is a lot to take in, Nolan. The position itself is significant enough without adding whatever this is. I understand. He didn't try to close the distance between them. Take the time you need. The offer stands regardless of how you respond to what I've just shared. The sound of the terrace door opening interrupted the moment. Patricia appeared, apologetic but insistent. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Reid, but the chairman is asking for you. They're about to propose a toast. We'll be right there, Nolan replied, his professional mask sliding back into place with practiced ease. As Patricia retreated, Sophia gathered her composure, mind racing with implications. We should go back inside. Of course, Nolan agreed. But Sophia. Not now, she said firmly. I need time to think about all of this. The position, your revelation. It's too much to process here. He nodded, respecting her boundaries. Take all the time you need. Whatever you decide about either matter, I'll respect it. As they rejoined the celebration inside, accepting congratulations and participating in toasts to Horizon's successful quarter, Sophia maintained her professional smile, while her thoughts whirled with possibilities. The president position represented everything she had worked for. recognition, authority, the chance to shape technology that affected millions of users. Yet Nolan's unexpected confession had complicated what should have been a straightforward career decision. Later that night, in the quiet of her apartment, Sophia sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea, contemplating the path before her. The journey from that humiliating night at the gala to this moment of unprecedented opportunity had been extraordinary by any measure. She had transformed from a dismissed executive to the potential second-in-command of one of tech's most influential companies. She had reclaimed not just her career but her dignity, earning respect from the very board that had once allowed her unceremonious firing. And somehow, along the way, she had apparently caused the seemingly impervious Nolan Reid to recognize his own humanity, his capacity for both cruelty and compassion, for destructive pride and humbling remorse. Whatever she decided about the president position, whatever evolved between her and Nolan personally, Sophia knew one thing with certainty. She had proven herself not just indispensable but indomitable. She had faced public humiliation and private doubt, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more powerful than before. The woman who had once been fired in front of everyone now held the future of Horizon, and perhaps its complicated CEO, in her hands. It was a reversal of fortune so complete that Sophia couldn't help but smile at its poetic justice. Tomorrow would bring decisions and new challenges, but tonight she allowed herself to savor the victory that no title or salary could measure, the reclamation of her power, her purpose, and her limitless potential. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.